Most people wait for the first warm day of spring to head into the garden, but if you want to grow a year's supply of fruit, you have to move now. This is a critical time of year for perennial plants that can be easily overlooked and neglected, and if you miss this window of time, you will definitely regret it. All it takes is a few simple steps, and you can multiply your fruit harvest many times over. So what we're going to tackle is all the maintenance for our perennial plants, which is mostly fruits. We do have some asparagus. We've got to do this right now before the plants break dormancy. In our area, the best time to do pruning is mid to late February, and we're at mid-February.
I always find it interesting that there's 4 seasons of the year, and there's always something to be doing in each season that's very relevant for the time, and it's very much a year-long stretched out thing instead of all crammed into summer or spring or fall.
We have actually been working on this pretty much any extra little moments that we have because it's not super exciting to do on camera, but we're gonna show you kind of a little bit of everything that we're working on right now and what needs to be done to these perennial plants for maximizing our harvest for this upcoming year. A huge part of maintaining our perennial crops is weed management, and in traditional agriculture they just spray everything, kill all the weeds, but we are doing things organically, so that is not an option for us. We have some pretty invasive weeds where we live, specifically Bermuda grass. So the best thing that I found to do is to lay down cardboard and then layer mulch over the top of that and just smother the Bermuda grass. And the other thing that we did is we planted additional blackberries in between the existing plants that we have, and that made more of a hedge where it blocks out a lot of sun, and Bermuda grass loves full sun and it hates being in the shade. So it really helped to weaken that Bermuda grass. Right in the front of this row is tayberries. It is a cross between a blackberry and a red raspberry, and I am pruning them the same way that I do my blackberries, and I'll show you how I do that when I get over to the blackberries. But for right now, Cam is just covering the areas that are really weedy with cardboard, and then once we get down to the other end, we have some bush cherries down there, and I'll show you what we're gonna do with them. So I bought some tree circles. These are just like really kind of a thick cardboard that are made to go around trees. So we actually already started putting some of these around our orchard, and we'll show you that pretty soon. But I'm gonna use them for these cherry bushes because the weeds here are just crazy. Like, we cannot keep up with these weeds during the summertime. Even though this isn't ideal, it works really well against the weeds. I was recently reading a gardening book, and the author was talking about how cardboard is bad for the soil. The concerns that were mentioned were that when cardboard is laid down, it reduces the microbial activity in the soil. And then the other concern is, of course, PFAS and other harmful chemicals that are in the cardboard. So the alternative option that was mentioned in this book was to cut all of the vegetation close to the ground and then add a 3 to 4 inch layer of shredded leaf mulch. While there are certain circumstances where this could work in certain areas of the country where there are less invasive weeds, where we live we have Bermuda grass, which is very invasive, and a 3 to 4 inch layer of leaf mulch would be no match for this Bermuda grass. It pops right up through anything that you put over it. With the exception of cardboard, that has been the best thing that I have found thus far to compete against the Bermuda grass without hand pulling it all out. All that to say, you do have to consider your context. So we are using cardboard. I know what to look for in the cardboard to be able to tell whether or not it's something I can use or it's something I shouldn't use. The other thing is, even though it's probably valid that it decreases the microbial activity in the soil, it's just a temporary thing. The cardboard breaks down really pretty quickly where we live because we get so much rain, and it accomplishes that goal of suppressing the weeds that are there. So this is one place where we really use a lot of sheet mulching. I've done a few areas of these blackberries several years in a row, And now that they're more established, 2 of these rows we just covered with mulch, and we didn't have to put any cardboard down because the Bermuda grass was not an issue there anymore. So we're using this cardboard and sheet mulch kind of as a crutch during these first few years, and then eventually we phase it out. So pruning fruit trees is definitely more of an art form. Pruning blackberries is way more straightforward. So I'm just going to tell you the steps that I do to prune these, and it's really pretty fast. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out any old canes, and it's really obvious because they are completely gray, whereas this floor cane has some reddish to it. So I'm going to cut all the gray ones out right now. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is you want to prune it down to 3 to 6 canes per plant. This already doesn't have that many canes, but what I am going to prune is I have some smaller canes coming up here. I'm just going to prune those out. And this one. Last summer, as these primocanes or first year canes were growing, I tipped the top of them. And what that did is it signaled to the rest of the plant to send out lateral shoots. And so all of these will produce fruit. So I get a lot more fruit this way rather than just having it on the tip. So the next step is to cut the laterals to 12 to 18 inches long. And so I'm just going to do that all the way down this blackberry cane. So the other thing I kind of forgot to mention is that when the blackberries, they grow outside of the trellis area, we are pulling those up and then planting them inside where it's trellis if there's space there. If there's not space, then we just get rid of all of the weak ones and stuff like that. But we have a couple of holes in the blackberries, so we're gonna fill in those spaces so we have a nice full row here. These are all pruned. The final step is to take these floor canes or second year canes and tie them to our trellis here. That makes room for the primocanes or the first year canes to come up through the middle, and it gives everything the air circulation it needs, and it also makes these easier to pick. We're going to take 50% of the canes and put them on this side and then 50% on the other side. Okay, I was just telling Cam off camera that I absolutely love pruning. This is something that I actually look forward to all year long. And I don't know why I love it. I know it's really weird, but I think it's super fun. So I'm glad I have a lot of plants to do because this is very enjoyable to me. We woke up this morning to a very cold and overcast day, and it may end up raining later on. So we're going to take a break from everything that we have going on outside and do some canning inside. I need to can some blueberry lemon jam today. It's been several years since I've made any blueberry jam, and this year I really want to take the lemon up a notch because I love lemon, so I think anything with a little bit more lemon flavor tastes really good. So I'm going to add a little bit of lemon zest and more lemon juice into this. And then we're going to use our usual Pomona's pectin for this. It allows me to use a lower amount of sugar because it doesn't need that sugar to gel. It uses calcium to activate the pectin. I'm going to use some of our frozen blueberries from our harvest last summer, and then I'm going to use honey in place of cane sugar. You might be wondering why on earth I am making blueberry jam in the middle of winter. The reason is because we are trying to empty out our freezers. It is that time of year when I don't have a lot going on outside, so I actually do a lot more canning this time of year than I do in the summer. And then it spreads the work out all year long instead of jam-packing all the canning into summertime and fall. It just makes it a lot more doable if I do a little bit throughout the winter time as well. A lot of the old school canning recipes for jam use a ton of sugar. We're talking almost double the amount of sugar than there is actual fruit. So one of my canning books, it had a blueberry jam recipe and it used 7 cups of sugar to 4.5 cups of blueberries. So that is why I like to make this low sugar version, because I'm using 4 cups of mashed blueberries to about 1.5 cups of honey. So it has a lot more fruit than added sugar. You can definitely tell it has less sugar, but it's actually kind of nice because you can taste some of the blueberry flavor coming through. If you want to make this low sugar jam but don't have the pectin, you can make this without it. You just have to boil the fruit and the sugar for a lot longer. What you're looking for is a temperature of 215 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit, and that really depends on your elevation. And for those who go off of Celsius, that's 102 to 104 degrees Celsius. At that point, the jam has hit the gelling stage and it's ready to be processed and canned. Our jars of blueberry lemon jam have cooled and they are ready to be labeled and stored. I am thinking we'll probably give some of these away as gifts. We usually give away some of our jam. I am not very crafty, so I never really know how to make these look nice. But recently I have found a good solution that makes them look really cute and presentable. I went to onlinelabels.com and created some labels for the jars. They have such a huge variety of materials, and I personally picked the removable white matte labels for these canning jars. I've always hesitated to use a label like this because I don't like it when they get stuck on the jars or leave residue, but choosing a removable option means that they come off really easy when we're ready to reuse the jar. One of my favorite parts of onlinelabels.com is that they have a label designer that makes it super easy to customize your labels the way that you want them. Now that we're done with that, we're gonna head outside and collect some eggs. We don't talk about this very often, but we do have a small farm business where we sell beef, pork, and eggs locally. So I'm gonna go grab some eggs and we're gonna get them packaged up. We've learned over time it's really important to have not only a quality product, but also good branding. We had our farm logo printed on these labels. You can get blank labels and print them yourself, or you can have onlinelabels.com print them for you. For these, I had them printed for us. They have the capability to support our business at all stages of growth. We could get 10 sheets of labels or 100,000, they do it all. I love how putting our logo onto these egg cartons make them look so much more professional. If you remember in our last video, we put orange peels inside of jars and then poured vinegar over the top and let them sit for 2 weeks. This is to make a homemade cleaner. Now it's time to strain out those oranges and take that liquid and then put them into spray bottles. I used a pre-made template in the Maestro designer for the orange vinegar cleaner, which made the design work super fast and efficient. I've been loving using these labels for our small business and for organizing, and I've just been looking for excuses to use them all over our house because it is so much fun. If you're looking to level up your business or just get more organized, onlinelabels.com is an incredible resource. Click the link in the description to visit their site and start creating your own. And make sure to use my code HOMESTEAD at checkout for 10% off your order. The next thing we're going to work on is the blueberries. We already mulched these a while ago, but we need to prune these now. And I really haven't done much pruning yet to the blueberries in the last couple of years because they're pretty young. So this is the first year that I'm going to do some more intensive pruning to these to revitalize the bushes. The first thing is I'm going to remove 1, 2, 3 of the oldest canes. And then the next step is to remove any branches that are crossing over. And then the third thing is we're going to prune up closer to the top and get rid of any of the older, more bushy kind of growth. It's really important to get rid of the older, brushy growth because as these canes get older, the blueberries will actually get smaller and the whole thing will just get weaker. And you just want to get rid of those and put all of the energy into the other growth. See how this is just one straight shoot that's 1 year old? On the second year, that one straight stem, it branches out and you'll have a couple stems coming off of that. On your second year stem, you have another little stem coming off from that. So that's what's growing on the third year. That's why we want to get rid of these, and that's how you can tell the difference between what year of growth the blueberry bush is.
The big one's not Gary. So while Becky's over at the blueberries doing some pruning there, I am here at the asparagus also to do some pruning. What I need to do here is cut down last year's old foliage, get that out of the way, and then come through with a torch and burn the ground along this row. The burning is twofold. It'll get rid of any disease, and then it'll also kill the weeds that are here in this area. Did I hear somebody say sharp knives and fire? I'm in. We've cut out all the dead growth here in the asparagus, and in the first 10 feet we noticed that there's a whole bunch of thick, deep-rooted fescue that needs to come out. If we burn that, it's gonna kill off the top growth, but the roots are thick enough and deep enough, it's just gonna grow right back. So our option really is to just completely remove that. So we're gonna do that by using the pickaxe to get the deep stuff, and then other weeds that are on the surface we're just gonna pick out by hand. When we use the pickaxe, we always have to be careful that we don't damage the roots or the crowns of these asparagus. So a very delicate process.
I just finished up pruning all of the blueberries. The other thing I did that I didn't mention is we have a lot of smaller blueberries, and in the past I have not done this, but I should have. I took off all of the little fruiting buds off the plants so that all of their energy goes into the plants getting bigger and healthier. So now I'm gonna go over and see how Cam is doing.
How are those blueberries?
Great.
Okay, weeds are all picked. It's time to light this place up. And yes, I do have water in case things get out of control. Okay, nothing caught fire that wasn't supposed to today. The only burn victims were the weeds on the ground, so I consider that a success. I cannot wait to grill some asparagus this summer.
Another perennial that we have that is very popular among home gardeners is strawberries. It is super important to thin out your strawberries from one year to the next, and the reason for that being is you get larger fruits, and you usually get more fruits if your plants are thinned out and spaced out. So that's a huge reason why we are doing all of this work to all of our fruits, because in the end we get higher yields and the plants are healthier. Our strawberry beds are always on the move. So we have our first strawberry bed that we started 3 years ago. This is its last year of production, and then we're gonna get rid of that strawberry bed. And I started a new one last year so that it could take over for our bed that is 3 years old. So now we'll have good production in this tunnel, and then the process just keeps going on. Strawberries have about a 3-year life cycle before the production starts to go down, the fruits get really small. They just can't get the same amount of nutrition in that one spot. So that's why we just keep moving them. It depends on how you maintain your strawberry beds. You could potentially keep them in one place for longer, but for us it just works well to keep most of the mother plants. Aside from just thinning out the strawberries, I'm also pulling out the weeds in this area. We had paper down here last year, and that did a really good job of keeping out most of the annual weeds, but we are at the point where the paper is breaking down, so there are some weeds popping through, especially some perennial weeds. Like I have some dock back here, and then in the very back I have Bermuda grass creeping up through that area, so we really need to get all of this stuff out before we start thinning out the strawberries. And then we need to put some compost over top of the strawberries to prep them for next year. The compost will come in a week or two because we don't have enough right now. So we need to get some, and then we'll put it on. There's one.
Yep.
We just finished getting out all of the Bermuda grass here in the back of the tunnel, and it took us a lot longer than I thought. It was all tangled up in everything. But thankfully we are done with that, and we probably got 98% of it out. And we'll just need to monitor this area in the summer to make sure it's not spreading. And now we're gonna move on to getting some of these perennial and annual weeds out. And then we'll work on thinning out the strawberries.
Hey, little bear. Hi.
Most strawberries by year 2, the runners have gone crazy, and then you have this huge mass of strawberries. And you may think you're gonna get a ton of strawberries out of it, but chances are you will not get as many as you think. And a lot of times you'll start to have some issues because they're so crowded that the strawberries will start to have like rot problems and things like that. And as I already mentioned, they'll get a lot smaller if they're too crowded. So in these areas that I have that are growing too close together, I'm just pulling out all of the smaller plants, all of the runners, and I'm replanting them in other areas if I need to. If they're not very strong, I'm just chucking them. So I forgot to mention something super important. That is that this is not the ideal time to be moving strawberries around. Fall is actually the best time to do it. Late winter would be probably the second best time. If you're new to growing strawberries, the terminology mother plant and daughter plant can be kind of confusing, especially in upcoming years when you can't really tell which is which. So what I'm looking for and what I'm saving are the crowns that are bigger. And this is definitely a runner daughter plant that came last year, but it had a lot of time to mature between then and now, so it's pretty large. So here is another runner, but it is super small. You can see how the roots are really tiny. This one I'm not saving. This one I'm replanting in one of the gaps that I have. We just finished with the strawberries in here. It took us much longer than we anticipated, but it feels good to have this job done. We thinned out all the strawberries in our other tunnel for the most part, so we're all prepped and ready as far as strawberries go. We just need to turn on the irrigation in here, and I'm also going to grab a watering can, put some soil prebiotic in that, and then put it over all of these strawberries. And next week we'll put the compost on, and these should be set to go for spring. The final thing that we need to do is mulching and pruning down here at the orchard.
Yeah, about 6 weeks ago we started mulching down here, so we're gonna hurry and show you that. Captain America! Becky bought these cardboard circles that we're going to lay around the tree trunks here in the orchard and put mulch on top of those, so then they'll act as a protective barrier against weeds.
So Cam was asking me if we should prune some of the bases of the trees where the suckers are, or even just prune all the trees right now. And the answer to that is no, we're not going to prune the trees. And the reason for that is we're still in the middle of winter and we should be closer to spring, because when you're close to spring, those cuts can heal really quickly and it lets in less opportunity for disease and things like that. So we're just going to leave the trees as they are for right now. And the other thing that we're doing is we're adding a lot of mulch around each of these trees. So we're putting the circle down and we're putting the mulch a lot further than that, because the roots, they go out really far in a wide area and we want to get those all covered with mulch. So those little cardboard tree circles are called tree guards. And as we put down the tree guard, Cam is bringing in the mulch. I am pulling the mulch away from the tree trunk and exposing that tree guard in the middle, because you don't want a ton of mulch in the middle of your tree. I'm trying to preserve any of the grafts that are down there, and also you don't want anything right against the tree trunk either. So the tree guards, they come with these little perforations so you can make them bigger in the middle if needed, if there's a larger tree trunk. And the mulch around the outer edge, I am layering that up pretty high because we don't have the cardboard underneath.
Got a nice little spot here. Time to take a nap. Becky, let's just finish up the orchard.
We pretty much finished up this whole first row of pear trees. We have just a few left.
It's getting dark, so we're gonna head in for dinner soon anyways.
Now that we're close to the end of February, it is the time of year when we actually can prune these trees. So I'm gonna be pruning today. Cam is gonna finish up the mulching.
Yeah.
Because we only got about halfway. I actually brought down this book with me. I bought this book this year. This is the best book I have ever read on pruning fruit trees. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. So I'm going to be using it as reference kind of as I go through my fruit trees. I see so many mistakes that I've made over the years. I wish I had had this a while ago, but this just came out in, I think it was, it came out last year. I have a bunch of central leader trees because I have apples and pears, and I see a lot of competing leaders that I need to prune off. The other thing is I have too many branches that are close to the ground. And the other thing I noticed when I was reading this book is I didn't build proper scaffolding branches. So I have a lot to work on. So I'm not going to be teaching you guys how to prune, but I just recommend this book instead. I really like it because it has good visuals and it's not just do this, it explains why you do it so that you can intuitively do other things that are not included in this book.
Okay, we had a family thing up at the house we needed to attend to, so we went and did that. We're back down at the orchard and it's getting dark, so we just need to hurry and finish up what we can.
Mm-hmm. All of our perennials are mulch pruned and ready for spring, which is a really good feeling. So now it is time to move on to a very large project that we have planned for next week. So stay tuned for that. It is our most ambitious project I think we've ever done. So.
Yeah. It's just a little one.